uplifted into the spirit.
Shall I read?
Yes, yes, men do that.
Uplifted into the spirit, the soul is no longer subject to nature. It is above the mental activity. It may be above it in detachment and aloofness, udasama, seated above and indifferent, or attracted by and lost in the absorbing peace or bliss of its undifferentiated, its concentrated spiritual experience of itself. We must then transcend by a complete renunciation of nature and cosmic existence, not conquer by a divine and sovereign possession. But the spirit, the divine, is not only above nature, it is master of nature and cosmos. The soul rising into its spiritual poise must at least be capable of the same mastery by its unity with the divine, must be capable of controlling its own nature, not only in calm or by forcing it to repose, but with a sovereign control of its play and activity.
Yeah. Again, very interesting language. We'll have to see because he's talking of several levels at the same time. As usual, he is doing that. So we'll have a look. It's a very small para. Uplifted into the spirit. The spirit is the spiritual planes of consciousness. Level 2, as we say, for clarity's sake. Uplifted into the spirit, the soul, your consciousness, is no longer subject to nature. So what is meant by soul? Soul is no longer subject to nature. You lose your identification with body, mind, life. That's what it means. You are no more. You realize that you are not the body, you are not the vital, you are not the mind. You are pure soul. And that happens when your consciousness rises into the spiritual planes of consciousness, which are four: higher mind, 11 mind, intuitive mind, overmind. Anyway, it may rise even higher than higher mind. It's possible, depending on the individual. So, uplifted into the spirit, your consciousness has gone up into the spiritual planes. The soul is no longer subject to nature. But note interestingly, the soul is no longer subject. But your body, mind, life continues to be slave of nature. Nature is making you dance. It is putting thoughts into your mind. It is putting emotions into your vital, and it is forcing your body to obey the laws of matter. Okay. So there's a discrepancy. There's a difference between the spirit which has gone up, the Purusha, and the Prakriti which continues in its old habits. Okay. Now, it may be above it. What is the it? The mental activity. It is above the mental activity, okay? But it may be above it in detachment and aloofness. The word used in Sanskrit, ud asina. Asina, seated. As is to sit, and asina is the adjective, seated above. Ud is above, seated above. It's like you are seated on the summit of a mountain and you are looking down the valley, you are not interested at all, you are aloof from it and detached. You are detached from your body, mind, life, you are detached even from the universe. It's not bothering you anymore. That is seated above and indifferent. Okay? Now Sundar is again going back into his old habit of giving you degrees, or attracted by and lost in the absorbing peace or bliss of its undifferentiated, its concentrated spiritual experience of itself. So there are two things that he's saying. One is your soul rises into the spiritual planes of consciousness and sees that it is the consciousness and the soul, and you see your body, mind, life. This is the first one. Then he's saying or. So what is that or? He's saying it is attracted and lost in the absorbing peace or bliss of its undifferentiated, its concentrated spiritual experience of itself. It is completely ignorant of the physical world. It loses contact with the physical world, nothing except remains except itself. Not the word undifferentiated. So the world is not there because the world is differentiated. It is not there, and it is also Lost. What is lost? Your consciousness is lost where? In the peace and bliss. It is completely one with peace and bliss. Okay? And it's concentrated spiritual experience of itself. In other words, the consciousness is aware only of its own consciousness. This is what we also call the Chid Ghana. Okay? You are conscious only of yourself. You are completely like a black hole. You are concentrated only in yourself. Nothing else exists for you. Neither the universe nor your body, mind, life, nothing at all. Very clear the language. See carefully, you will see. It is your consciousness is lost. Lost where? In the absorbing. So nothing else is there except the peace and bliss. If you are lucky, you can have bliss also. Not always. Sometimes it's only peace. Sometimes it is peace and bliss. Of its undifferentiated. That means no many, nothing except itself. Undifferentiated. Undifferentiated means one. Differentiated means many. It is completely lost to the physical world and your body, mind, life. It's concentrated spiritual experience of itself. This is what we call the Chit Dhana. Just 1 minute. I want to make a note of this. Comment. Add comment. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so now we go on. Then he's saying, once that happens, we must then we must then transcend by a complete renunciation of nature and cosmic existence, not conquer by a divine and sovereign possession. Okay? So let's see what he's saying. We must, once you have got that, once you have got, either you are seeing the physical world, you are seeing your body, mind, life, but you are differentiated from it, that's number one. And the other is you are not even conscious of your body, mind, life, you are only conscious of your own consciousness. Then after that he's saying, we must then transcend by complete renunciation of nature, no contact with nature at all, and cosmic existence. The world also doesn't exist for you. Okay? But not conquered by a divine and sovereign position. That not conquered by divine and sovereign position is at the highest level. So it is not yet gone to that level. But the spirit, the divine, is not only above nature, it is master of nature and cosmos. It can become master in nature of cosmos. So first level, you are detached from the world. Nothing affects you. But you don't have much power over it. Secondly, you must also become master of the divine, you have power over it. That can happen when you go to the highest level. The spirit, the divine, is not only above nature, but it's also master of nature and cosmos. So, the soul rising into its spiritual poise is level 2, not the supramental. At least there, Sridhar is saying, it must be capable of the same mastery by its unity with the divine. So, it must be capable of controlling its own nature, not only in calm or by forcing it to repose, but with a sovereign control of its play and activity. So, you rise into the spiritual planes of consciousness, detach yourself from the body, mind, life. In the beginning, you may feel it is different, but you have to slowly become master of your own body, mind, life. To a certain extent, the mastery is possible even in the spiritual planes, because when you are in the overmind consciousness, there is the possibility of controlling largely your body. Only in the supramental will your body become totally divine. But your nature, your mind and your vital can definitely be controlled in the spiritual planes of consciousness, which is the level 2. Level 3, even the body will become divine. That's totally different. So very clearly what Sridhar is saying, get rid of your identification with the body, mind, life, become detached from it, get into a condition where nothing is affecting you at all, and there also there are two things. One, nothing is affecting you, but the second is that you are absorbed in yourselves to such an extent that you have total peace and even bliss, ananda. Okay, so very clear language what Surendra is using. Now we go to the next para. To arrive by an intense spirituality. Archana, you will read?
No, Rangada, I can't read here. I'm in the ward.
Okay, I understand. Then either Shilpa or Sunki. Sunki, you will read?
Yes, I will read.
Okay, go ahead. To arrive by an intense spirituality.
Yeah. To arrive by an intense spirituality at the absolute of the soul is our possibility on one side of our dual existence. To enjoy the absolute of nature and of everything in nature is our possibility on the other side of this eternal duality. To unify these highest aspirations vision of God and ourselves and the world should be our happy completeness. In the lower poise, this is not possible because the soul acts through the mind, and the mind can only act individually and fragmentarily in a contented obedience or a struggling subjection to that universal nature through which the divine knowledge and the divine will are worked out in the cosmos. But the spirit is in possession of knowledge and will, of which it is the source and cause and not a subject. Therefore, in proportion as the soul assumes its divine or spiritual being, it assumes also control of the movement of its nature. It becomes, in the ancient language, Swarat, free and a self-ruler over the kingdom of its own life and being. But also it increases in control over its environment, its world.
Yeah. So again a small para, and we'll look at what is to arrive by an intense spirituality at the absolute of the soul. The absolute of the soul is only the soul exists for you and nothing else. Is our possibility on one side of the dual existence. Which is the dual existence? Existence in the physical world with your identification with the body mind life, the lower nature. Or the other one, you are in the spiritual planes of consciousness, and that is the other, the dual existence. So that is, but you can experience the absolute of the soul. That is very, very possible for the human being. That's what he's saying. Is our possibility on one side of our dual existence to enjoy the absolute of nature. Now, what is the absolute of nature? The absolute of nature is not the relativity of nature. The relativity of nature is the lower nature. Nature in the physical world, mechanical, unconscious. But you have to become the absolute of nature, nature at its highest level. Okay? And it is there conscious. It is not unconscious and mechanical. So to enjoy the absolute of nature and of everything in nature is our possibility on the other side of the eternal duality. So one is you can become master, that's what he's saying. In everything is our possibility on the other side of the eternal duality. The eternal duality continues also, remember, even into the spiritual planes of consciousness. So what he is talking about here is our possibility on the other side. I think he is talking of the supermind, where you can enjoy nature fully. You realize that nature is not unconscious, and you can enjoy everything in the physical world. Okay, so that's what he said. To unify these highest aspirations in a divine possession of God and ourselves and the world should be our happy completeness. So, completeness, no rejection of the physical world, enjoying everything in the physical world, not giving it up, but being capable of enjoying everything in the physical world. You, Sharma use the word possession. Okay. Yes, you have to possess God, and God possesses you. When you possess God, you have all the powers of God. Okay? And in fact, you become one with God and ourselves. And which is ourselves? Your body, mind, life. Okay? So the divine possession of God and ourselves, and the world, you are also fully possessing the world. In other words, you can do what you want with the world. Okay. You remember I told you about Surendra doing things in the physical world. Okay, he is determining events in Ireland. They were fighting the British, and they were wanted the Sinn Féin movement. They were resisting the English, and they got their independence from the English. But only the northern part of Ireland still continues to remain in the Britain's control. Okay, so Sremda was helping them at that time. And an interesting side story is that unlike India, which was trying to get independence through non-violence, the Irish did not do that. They fought the British with guns and they suffered for it. Because if you are doing that, then the British will take revenge on your family, your society. They'll do all that. So they had a lot of suffering, the Irish, but they got their freedom. So that's, by the way, just incidentally. So Surendra is saying that you can possess God, you can possess yourself, and even the world. In other words, you have power in the world. He was influencing the Russian Revolution. He was influencing also the change of government in Turkey. Turkey was the Khalif was in charge, and it was the Islamic laws that were operating. But he managed to, through Kemal Atatürk, he was the one who made Turkey a modern republic based on democratic values, not the Islamic values. Now they are trying to go back to the Islamic values, but still it's a republic. It's a democratic republic. So Sremda was doing all these things. That's what is meant by being in possession of the world. That's what I just said. We also know the famous case of the Dunkirk. Okay. In Dunkirk also he was interfering and intervening, not interfering, intervening and getting results. Okay. Fantastic result in Dunkirk. We all know that. Now I go to the next sentence. To unify these highest aspirations in a divine position of God and ourselves and the world should be our happy completeness. That is the aim that all human beings should do. You should not be satisfied only by the ascetic refusal of the physical world and enjoy peace and calm. No, there is something even better. In the lower poise, when you are identified with your body, mind, life, level 1, this is not possible because the soul acts through the mind and the mind can only act individually. That means not cosmically. We are not in the cosmic consciousness. We are only in the individual consciousness. And fragmentarily in a contented obedience. Okay. You can, when you are even identified with your body, mind, life, you are in a happy condition and you think that you are obeying the divine and you are quite happy. That also is possible. Or you are in a struggling subjection to that universal nature through which the divine knowledge and the divine will are worked out in the universe. Either you struggle with your own nature and your own nature is only part of universal nature, or you accept contentedly and obey what the divine is telling you to do. You take all the pleasant and unpleasant experiences in a very calm, quiet manner. You submit yourself to the divine will. Okay, that's what it means. So, but the spirit, your soul, is in possession of knowledge and will, of which it is the source and cause, and not a subject. The soul is, in the lower poise, the soul is identified with the body, mind, life and loses its divinity. But in the higher, it has got knowledge and will. So knowledge corresponds to consciousness and will corresponds to Shakti. Both of them you have. You are coming from Chit Shakti. That's why. Of which it is the source and cause and not a subject. You are not subject to nature. The possibility is there in your soul. Therefore, in proportion as the soul assumes its divine or spiritual being, it assumes also control of the movements of its nature. In other words, the higher you rise, again note that there is a gradation. It depends at which level you are. The higher you are, the more control you have. Okay. Therefore, in proportion as the soul assumes its divine spiritual being, okay, what's the difference? divine or spiritual being. Divine being, supermind. Spiritual being, level 2. Okay? So he's so careful now. Every time Sridhar uses or, you stop and then think what he's saying. Okay? So either it can assume the divine nature or it can assume the spiritual nature. Okay? The spiritual nature, level 2. It assumes also control of the movements of its own nature. It becomes, in the ancient language is Sanskrit. He's not saying Sanskrit, he's saying ancient language. Swarat. Swarat is you are master of yourself. Swarat, free and a self-ruler over the kingdom of his own life and being. But also it increases in control over its environment, its world. And he has not used the word here, but it is Samrat. You become the emperor. You are not only master of yourself, the inner being, but when you control the universe, you are Samrat. You are the emperor of the world. That's what he's saying. Okay? Small paragraphs, but very, very clear. So now we can read the next one. I think Shilpa is there only on the line now. So, Shilpa.
Hello.
Yes, tell me.
I am just wondering,
Yeah.
why did Northern Ireland not get freedom?
Yeah, Ireland did get freedom. Yeah. So, what happened, Jasmine?
You know, the southern part got freedom, but a part of Northern Ireland is still under British rule.
That's what I said, yes.
So I'm wondering why.
Oh, that was the hard bargaining of the English. I think it was on religious grounds. Okay, one is a Protestant and the other is a Catholic, and that's why there is a lot of problem even now with the Northern Ireland. Okay, it is part of England and it's based on religion. They didn't want to give it up, and even today it is like that. And there often clash between the island and the Northern Ireland. That is a problem. Yeah. I think it is based on religion, Protestant and Catholic. I'll have to check that, but that's my impression. The English are very tough bargainers. They don't. In India, they could not bargain because the whole army was revolting. So they had to quickly put their tails between their legs and run away. That's what they did. And they ran away in helter-skelter in such a horrible way. Okay, you really, I mean, it's fantastic. The partition of India was done by a fellow who knew nothing about India. Okay? And he was given 2 months to draw the lines. And he had to draw the line in such a way that there is a division between Hindu population and Muslim population. And how can you do that? Because in nature, everywhere, there is a mixture. In Bangladesh, for instance, okay, it has taken 75 years to redraw the lines, okay, and they have just been able to do it in Bangladesh because Bangladesh is relatively friendly with India. Okay, so they have been able to redraw the line. Those villages which are maximum Muslim, they are put into Bangladesh, and those villages which are more Hindu, they have included into India. So that they have redrawn the lines, okay, on the map, and they have come to a happy conclusion. But in Pakistan side, that problem is still there. There are so many mosques in India, and there are so many gurdwaras and temples in Pakistan. Okay, and this problem is always there. So let's go to the.
We cannot take it as a divine will, this line, whatever they have drawn. But of course, there must be some divine will behind that only, no? If we take positively.
Yes, the divine will is always there and we can always benefit from things. But we have to look very carefully to see what is the lesson being given. Maybe it's that you have to achieve total unity, and that unity will come very soon. Pakistan is destined to break up into 3 or 4 countries if you want. Sindh will become definitely something independent, Baltistan and Baluchistan will also give its independence. Okay, all these things will happen. Punjab will merge with West Punjab and East Punjab should merge. We'll have to see how it happens. But it is all very clear and it is going, even Pakistani media is saying that, okay? Just because Bangladesh separated, exactly the same thing is also going to happen with Balochistan. By the way, Balochistan was an independent country when the British left, okay? But it's the Pakistan who occupied and made it part of their own territory. And Balochistan and the northwest frontier, Peshawar area, they wanted to join India. In fact, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan was very, very unhappy with Gandhi. They refused. They said, no, you're 5,000 miles away. What is the use of you joining India? You join Pakistan. This is what we did. So the Congress party, all its shortcomings are all coming to the front now after 75 years. Okay. This is what they refused. And who refused? It was the Abdul Kalam. Abdul Kalam, not the scientist, but the one who was education minister in the time of independence. He told Northwest Frontier. You have probably heard all of Abdul Ghaffar Khan. Ghaffar Khan was a tall, okay, he was a wonderful figure and he was a follower of Gandhi. But they refused. Yes. He wanted to join India. So all that will now work out in the next 2-3 years. That is sure. Okay, so we go to the next para, we have time. This it can only do. Shilpa, you will read?
Yes.
Gita also is there. She can also read if she wants.
This it becomes that.
Yeah, this it can only do.
No, this it becomes. The para is.
No.
Because I do this para. After the uplifted one, in my book, it is a different paras. The distinction made in Gita, then as the pure witness.
Yeah, okay. Then you read that. The distinction made in the Gita.
No, it is this it can only do entirely by universalizing itself.
Exactly. That's what I also think. But these seems to have different.
In my book, I don't have these paras.
No, how can it be? You have to have the para either before or after. Or it may be the middle of a para. This it can only do entirely.
Because after the uplifted into the spirit, the soul, Yasmin, they read, I have the distinction made in the Gita between that para I am having.
Okay. So this new para that you have, is it not included in the previous para?
No.
Okay.
Can I read? I'll read it then.
I think Gitanjali will read. Yeah.
This it can do. This it can only do entirely by universalizing itself, for it is the divine and universal will that it must express in its action upon the world. It must first extend its consciousness and see the universe in itself instead of being, like the mind, limited by the physical, vital, sensational, emotional, intellectual outlook of the little divided personality. It must accept the world truths, the world energies, the world tendencies, the world purposes as its own, instead of clinging to its own intellectual ideas, desires, and endeavors, preferences, objects, intentions, impulses. These, so far as they remain, must be harmonized with the universal. It must then submit its knowledge and will at their very source to the divine knowledge and the divine will, and so arrive through submission at emergence, losing its personal light in the divine light and its personal initiative in the divine initiative. To be first in tune with the infinite, in harmony with the divine, and then to be unified with the infinite, taken into the divine, is its condition of perfect strength and mastery, and this is precisely the very nature of the spiritual life and the spiritual existence.
Very interesting, and we'll have a look at what he's saying. This it can only do. What is this? This to become master of yourself, to possess God, possess yourself, and possess the world. This is what it can do. Only entirely by universalizing itself. That means your ego completely disappears and you become the divine himself. You universalize yourself. For it is the divine and universal will that it must express in its action upon the world. If you want to, you have to become God. Identify yourself totally with the God consciousness. It must first extend its consciousness and see the universe in itself. Now that's interesting. Look at the words, it's so clear. It must first extend its consciousness. At our level, our consciousness is limited to the body. Okay? It's limited to the body, but it has to go beyond the body. Okay? Sometimes one gets an experience where you feel that you are not limited to the body. You feel yourself to be expanding, and you feel that you are. Sometimes you get even the impression of the distance. Okay, I know of one person who felt that he is spreading out 15-20 meters beyond his own body. That's all part of me. You feel. Okay, that's an extension of consciousness. I'll also mention something else. Your consciousness is completely coincident with your body. Outside the body, you are not aware, okay, behind your back or even outside your hand. But what is happening in the hand, you are conscious. So your consciousness is completely coincident with the body. But a yogi can can remove consciousness as part of his body. Okay, he can do that. He says, I'll take out my consciousness from my body. I'm going to take it out. You do whatever you want. Even if you put a matchstick on your skin, it will burn because it's a law of the physical world. But he won't feel any pain because the consciousness is not there. So if the yogi can reduce his consciousness from part of his body, he also has the power to extend his consciousness beyond the body. Okay? And when you extend your consciousness beyond the body, you start becoming universal. You have the cosmic consciousness. Okay? But that can also happen in two ways. You feel yourself to be beyond your body, but you're not conscious of everything in the body. But the cosmic consciousness, you become conscious of whatever is outside your body also. So this is what Srinivas is saying. It can do only by universalizing itself. For it is the divine and universal will that must express in its action upon the world. Now look at the words. It must first extend its consciousness, go beyond the body, and see the universe in itself. So this is the cosmic consciousness in one of its aspects. The universe you see within yourself. Okay? Instead of being like the mind, limited by the physical, vital, sensational, emotional, intellectual outlook of the little divided personality. When you are in your physical, vital, sensational, emotional, intellectual outlook, your little divided personality, ego. Little divided personality, clearly you can replace with the word ego. You are in the ego consciousness and you see the physical world outside yourself. But when you are in the cosmic consciousness, you see the physical world within yourself. Okay, that's the difference. And seeing the world within yourself also, I told you there are two. Okay, one is the entire universe is within yourself, or the other is you are in everybody else. The apprehensive consciousness and the comprehensive consciousness. You feel yourself to be everybody else with a different face. Sridhar has got two sonnets. In one sonnet he says that the largest stars in the universe are burning within me. That's one consciousness, cosmic consciousness. That's we refer back to Sri Krishna's Bala Krishna when he's swallowing mud. And Yashoda comes and says, what the hell are you doing? She opens his mouth and she sees the whole universe in the mouth. That's a symbol of the cosmic consciousness. Okay. Then the other one, you see yourself in everybody else. So the sonnet says, to whichever face I turn, I see myself with another face. So two types of consciousnesses. One is the whole universe is within you, and the other is you are within everything in the universe. Okay. That's what the two things. So Sridhar is saying here, it must first extend its consciousness and see the universe in itself, instead of being like the mind limited by the physical, vital, sensational, emotional, intellectual outlook of the little divided personality. It goes into such detail. It's not only the mental, it's also vital, but also physical, also sensational, the nerves, emotional, the higher vital, intellectual outlook of the little divided person. It must accept the truth, world truths. Whatever is there in the world now becomes true for you. When you are in the spiritual planes of consciousness, sometimes it is not true. Now the world is unreal. But here simply saying, you are at a level of consciousness where the world, all the truths are real to you. The laws of the physical world, the world energies, the world tendencies, the world purposes. Now, you have to just think a little bit what he means by world truths, world energies, world tendencies, and world purposes. There's a gradation there. The world truths is what exists in the physical world, the laws of the physical world. The world energies which are going to manifest. So world energies, they have not yet become energisms. Okay. So then the world tendencies, that is the potential. The world has got tendencies, and that so there's a gradation very clearly here. And the world purpose is the highest. So world purpose is the highest. Then when it comes down a little bit, that purpose becomes a tendency, becomes more possible. Then it comes down to the energies, okay? And finally you have the physical truths. So he is very clearly giving you the gradations. Okay? Truths, world energies, world tendencies, world purposes. Very interesting to know the language. As its own, instead of clinging to its own intellectual ideas, desires and endeavors. Again here, look at the, when you are identified the body mind life, you have got intellectual ideas, you have got desires, you have got endeavors, you want to do things, you have got preferences, you have got even objects. Okay, you have aims in life, you have intentions and impulses. So all this must disappear and it must become divine purposes, divine tendencies and all. These, so far as they remain, must be harmonized with the universal. So even if you have a individual will, it must reflect the divine will. Okay. This is very interesting. I'll tell you, because sometimes I'll give you two examples. Okay. One was a person was in difficulty and they appealed to mother. Now mother, as the mother with a divine consciousness, says that you deserve the divine grace and you will be saved. It is she who is acting. But this will in her is completely in accordance with the divine will. But if she feels that what I want to do is not in consonance with the divine will, it may not happen. She may keep quiet. But it is possible for your individual will to become part of the divine will. That's what he's saying so clearly. There is another interesting case of Raman Maharshi. Okay, so Raman Maharshi, one elderly couple came to him and said that for 25 years we have not had any children. Okay, we are not getting any children. So please bless us so that we get a child. Now, this would be Raman Maharshi in his individual capacity granting them this child. And they got a child immediately after that prayer. Okay, so is it the divine will or is it the Ramana's personal will? It is both together.
Divine will.
Huh? Pardon?
Divine will.
Yeah, divine will. But then you are reflecting the divine will through the individual. Okay, so that's what it is. So now look at the words, you will understand what he's saying. These, what these? Intentions, objects, preferences, so far as they remain, that means you still have a little bit of your personal will, personal preference and all. So far as they remain, little bit, must be harmonized with the universal. Very clear? Your own individual will exists, but it is now reflecting the divine will. But a time must come when you have to go even beyond that. That means absolutely no individual will, no individual purpose. Only you become a perfect instrument of the divine, nothing personal, nothing limited in your own limited consciousness. You become a fully a instrument of the divine. That's very difficult. It doesn't happen. Yes, normally your individual will, individual intention and all these things remain. Okay. So it must then submit its knowledge and will at their very source to the divine knowledge and the divine will, and so arrive through submission at emergence. Look at the words. You submit yourself to the divine will and divine knowledge, and emergence means you lose yourself in that ocean of knowledge and divine will. Emergence means total plunging into something. When you dive into the sea, you are immersed in the sea. You are merged with the sea. No more individuality. You become part of it. Losing its personal light in the divine light and its personal initiative in the divine initiative. Initiative, a desire or a will or an intention, that's an initiative. You are initiative in the divine initiative. To be first in tune with the infinite, in harmony with the divine, and then to be united with the infinite. Okay? Taken into the divine is its condition of perfect strength and mastery, and this is precisely the very nature of the spiritual life and the spiritual existence. Here also see there's a gradation. Okay? First you have to be in tune with the infinite. In other words, you still have your individual intention, individual will, but that will is not now ego based. It is connected with the divine. That's in tune with the divine. But now it has become in harmony with the divine. So that's it. 1 degree again, better than only tune, and finally united with the infinite. So you see how Sri Aurobindo is so clear about the different grades. First you have an individual will, but you are in tune with the divine will. You are vibrating to that. Both are existing. The divine will is there and your own personal will is there. There is no essential difference between the two. Then in harmony with the divine, much better than tune. And then to be united with the divine. No more individuality at all. Taken into the divine is this condition of perfect strength and mastery. So strength and mastery we have discussed many times, possible only at the supramental level. And this is precisely the very nature of the spiritual life and the spiritual existence. Okay? So, we are going into great detail because then you will appreciate Sri Aurobindo's, when he uses words, you must know at what level he is speaking. That's why we go on stressing level 1, level 2, level 3, and also the various possibilities, the gradations that happen. It's not absolutely geometrically fixed level 1, level 2, level 3. No, there are gradations everywhere. Okay? I think we have only 5 minutes. So it depends on how big the next para is. Let's see. If it is not too big, Shilpa can read it. It's not very big. I think Shilpa can read it. Shilpa, you have this para, na?
Yes, the distinction.
Yeah, read it.
The distinction made in Gita between the Purusha and the Prakriti gives us the clue to the various attitudes which the soul can adopt towards nature in its improvement towards perfect freedom and rule. The Purusha is, says the Gita, witness, upholder, source of the sanction, knower, lord, enjoyer. Prakriti executes. It is the active principle and must have an operation corresponding to the attitude of the Purusha. The soul may assume, if it wishes, the poise of the pure witness, Sakshi. It may look on at the action of nature as a thing from which it stands apart. It watches, but does not itself participate. We have seen the importance of this quietistic capacity. It is the basis of the movement of withdrawal by which we can say everything: body, life, mental, action, thought, sensation, emotions. This is Prakriti working in the life, mind, and body. It is not myself. It is not even mine, and thus come to the soul separation from those things and to the quiescence. This may therefore be an attitude of renunciation or at least of non participation, tamasika, with a resigned and inherent endurance of the natural action too long as it lasts, rajasika, and with a digest, aversion and recoil from it, sattvika, with the luminous intelligence of the soul's separateness and the peace and joy of aloofness and repose. But also it may be attended by an equal and impersonal delight, as of a spectator at a show, joyous but unattached and ready to rise up at any moment and as joyfully depart. The attitude of the witness at its highest is the absolute of unattachment and freedom from action by the phenomena of the cosmic existence.
Okay. So we will do this next time. All right. I've lost the page.
The para ends on page 449.
Okay, 445, but your page is different. But anyway, we are
No,
going
yours will be 449.
449, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the para ends.
So,
Phenomena of cosmic existence.
yeah, I've got it. So this para we will redo. He is referring back to the Gita, and we will give all the Sanskrit terms that the Gita uses for this. Okay, he's saying very clearly. Sakshi, witness, upholder, source of sanction, knower, Lord, enjoyer. So we'll give all the references in the Gita and we'll discuss the gradations. It's very interesting.
It is Sakshi Bharta. Upholder is Bharta.
Yeah, Bharta, Jnata, Bhokta, okay?
Yeah, Ishvara,
Anumanta, yeah, all these
Anumanta.
things are there. So what is the gradation of all these things? We will discuss next time, okay? The distinction made in the Gita. So we make a note on our chat. So let us say redo pages 431, right? 431, and we will do the distinction made in the Gita. The distinction. Okay. Au revoir, everybody.
Hello.
8:40. Yeah.
You know, you said about the 3 levels of the will.
Yes.
The third level is absolute identifying with the divine. What
That's
was
right.
the second level?
Second level is the spiritual planes of consciousness, where you are
so
not.
what happens to the will?
What happens to the
Will, W-I-L-L.
Okay. You have an individual will, but there are 3 gradations, as I just told you just now. So when you are in the spiritual planes of consciousness, you can have an individual will, but first of all, it must be in tune with the divine. Secondly, it must be in harmony with the divine, and finally, it must be merged into the divine. So that's what happens in the will, knowledge, force, everything. Okay. You still have a part of your individuality. It's not the ego anymore. It's the individuality, the true individual. But at the highest level, even that individuality can become absolutely infinite and divine.
Okay. Merci beaucoup.
Okay. Everybody, have a nice day.